Welcome to Monday, welcome to Countdown Day, and as voted on by fans, this week's topic came from our buddy Raziel Kane, and it's a pretty good one that has to do, of course, with Transformers collecting, but it could apply to collecting overall. This is the top 10, as voted on by fans, disadvantages to being a collector. That's our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course subscribe, and while you are at it, light them up, baby! Hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton, and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that is in the description down below. Also in the description down below. And if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. And this is, as voted on by fans, the top 10 disadvantages to being a collector. Now, we've looked at previously the top 10 best things about being a collector, and we've looked at the top 10 pet peeves. This is disadvantages. Some of it may overlap a little bit with some of that, but this is things that are challenges that a collector, really of anything, but in our case, Transformers, will really have to face. And it's a nuisance and it's a pain sometimes, or it's a challenge of learning to pick your battles. You'll see what I mean as we go through. Of course, we're going to kick things off with our honorable mentions, and there are 3 of them. These are disadvantages that collectors have that had votes but did not have enough to actually rank on the list. The very first one is spouses, and by spouses, it kind of means 2 things. One, it means that you may have a spouse who is unsupportive of whatever it is you collect and doesn't want you to collect it. And that can cause friction in a relationship. Or even if your spouse is supportive, it also means that, you know what, when they want to do something or have a project of their own, you really have to struggle if you're going to pick a fight and say no to it. Because honestly, do you really have any room to complain? Do you really have any room to say no when they indulge your spending habits and your buying habits, and of course your display habits and the space you take up and everything else? You know, sometimes it's a two-way street. It's a give and take. I get it. So spouses and navigating your relationship, that can be a challenge that collectors face. And some people succeed with it and some people don't. Also, competing with other collectors. Yes. One of the biggest challenges. Something is going to be a hot item. It goes up. The pre-orders go out. It sells out fast, and you got a lot of people that are left out in the cold. I would venture to say that one of the biggest issues in competing with collectors is when we get things like troop builders, when we have some collectors who feel like they're entitled to have, 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 of a particular mold, while some people would just like to have one. And they haven't been able to find any of them. I go way back, man, to the Titans Return Sharkticons and how impossible they were to find. I myself managed to find, actually I found 2 and somebody else bought me one from another location, so that was 3. Once I had a trio, any other time I saw a mold, I let other collectors know because I knew a lot of people didn't even have one. And I'd done the same thing with the Cyberverse Sharkticons, and I'd done the same thing with the Studio Series 86 Sharkticons. Thankfully, the 86s, which are hard to get, are getting a reissue. So that's good. So yeah, both of that, competing with other collectors, having to deal with your spouse, navigate your relationships, and distribution frustration. We all know the bane of distribution and how it can affect where things go. And some places get an absolute glut of product. Other places, nothing. It's like a desert. A lot of it boils down to the luck of the draw of where it is you live. And that's also why it's important for collectors to help one another out. However, that being said, you have some people who will say, we never get anything new. It's because the old stuff didn't sell. It's a sad state of affairs when distribution can't be worked out. And whether that falls on the producer, the manufacturer, the actual distribution company, or each retailer and their internal distribution chains, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if it seems sloppy and haphazard, and some places have a lot and some places are absolutely barren, it's a frustration because you never know what's going to come to your neck of the woods or when it's going to come to your neck of the woods. Those 3 honorable mentions. they did not make the list. They did not have enough votes to rank in the very limited 10 spots. So now that we've got the honorable mentions out of the way, you know what we're going to do, man. We're going to kick things off, as we always do, with number 10 up first. Coming in at number 10 for disadvantages that collectors need to face, specifically Transformers collectors, but if you collect plates, spoons, stamps, comic books, whatever it is, I bet you'll be able to relate to a lot of these. Number 10 is dealing with scalpers. Yeah, scalpers are the bane of any collector community. I don't care what it is. These are people that go out and try to buy up as much product as they can and then artificially sell it at inflated prices. As if the mainline retail isn't artificial and inflated enough. You need somebody now who will take a $20 or $30 product and they're going to try and sell it for $60 or $70 or $80 or $100 because they believe the demand is there. It's always been a problem, whether it's video games or whether it's rare, collector plates or whether it's Transformers. Scalpers are the bane of a collector community's existence and honestly the biggest black eye that collectors need to deal with. It is the ultimate disadvantage because it makes ordering online difficult without there being product limits. It makes going to the store difficult. As a matter of fact, one particular voter told a story about how they were in a Target, I believe it was, in the US with their child. And they were followed by a known scalper and approached by the scalper who wanted the product in their hand because they wanted to get it to resell it. I mean, how brazen, how blatant, what a disadvantage that collector and their kid never ever should have had to face. How classless scalpers are. My best advice, don't indulge it. Don't ever want anything bad enough to pay scalper prices. If we don't support them, eventually they'll go away. Scalpers, one of the biggest disadvantages to any collecting community, and it took the number 10 slot. Number 9 is the hunt itself. I mean, I have a shirt line, or I did. I think it's after kind of being a promotion that's closed out now. I should probably add it again. That says on it, "To the hunt." And I personally enjoy the hunt. I like going around. I like finding something on the shelves. But a lot of fans said, hey, I don't like having to go everywhere to find that one thing that I really, really want, that one character I really, really want. It's sold out everywhere. Oh, this was the release date. You can't find it anywhere. It's not online. Oh my goodness. Or maybe it came out, some time ago, and now you're going to try and hunt it in a backlog, and all of the prices are wildly inflated. My best advice there would be, hey, man, if you're able to wait, play the long game, be patient, you might just happen on the right deal at the right time. However, there are definitely those occasions where the hunt itself, whether online or in physical person, is a huge challenge, a Herculean task, if you will. Enough fans feel like one of the biggest disadvantages is having to hunt for product that should just be readily available to everybody, that it took the number 9 slot. Number 8 is a very interesting addition to the list. I think it's a major issue, at least in the Transformers collectors community. Probably in a lot of other communities. And I feel like it's become more of an issue within the last 5 years. And it is FOMO, fear of missing out. One of the biggest disadvantages to being any type of collector. You want to go all in on something that you want. You're going to put in a pre-order. You're hoping that, maybe the release date doesn't change because, if it comes out a month earlier, I won't have the money. Or if it comes out a month later, I don't like to have to wait. I have to put a pre-order in. I hope it gets filled and all of this stuff because you have that fear of missing out. I think that works in concert with a little talked about issue within the collector community, and that is collector addiction. How much of it is that you actually want this item, and how much of it is you want it because it exists? Yeah, FOMO. It can be a very dangerous motivator, and one that a lot of people struggle to rally against. Something new goes up. Do I want it? Do I not? I better put a pre-order in just in case. Yeah, the fear of missing out. One of the biggest disadvantages to being a collector, and it took the number 8 slot. Number 7, I think, is a very interesting one as well. It can come from family, friends, or strangers because number 7 is stigma. Being judged, being asked questions like, why are you collecting this? Why are you interested in that? If you're somebody, for example, who's a toy collector or a video game collector and you're 35, 40, 45 years old, sometimes you get a lot of strange stares. Sometimes you get a lot of odd questions of, why would you be interested in that? Everybody got their interests, man. Everybody got their things that they like, whether it's sports or whether it's comics or whether it's art or whether it's toys, whether it's nostalgia driven, ability driven, or just something you want to learn about. Everybody is entitled to like what they like. If you're not doing yourself or anybody else any harm, friends, family, and strangers really have no right to judge you. The stigma that goes along with being a collector, especially a toy collector, took the number 7 slot. Number 6, oh, the bane of any collector. I don't care, man, if it's Transformers, if it's G.I. Joes. I don't care if you collect candles. I don't care if you collect candlesticks, plates, whatever it is. It is dusting. Dusting and cleaning. Oh, man, oh, man. I generally don't do it, but to be fair, I kind of regularly take stuff down off my shelves, and when I do, then I clean them up then, right? Some people, however, will set aside certain times in the year where they will do collection spring cleaning, where they will take everything off, they'll dust all of the pieces off, they'll dust all of the shelves off, and it can be the sort of thing that's so time consuming, it could take days, or for some people it takes weeks, depending on how large the collection really is. I think it's wise maybe to do this a little bit at a time. Choose a shelf or two. Do it this week. Maybe a couple of weeks later you choose a different shelf or two and do those. I think that there's a tolerable way to do it. But having to move all of your precious treasures and hope that you can put them back in the right order in the same place with the same space after the fact, yeah, it's always a challenge to keep that display looking good. And I'm not the best example of how to do it. But dusting, cleaning, yeah, that took the number 6 slot. And now we have reached the ever-coveted, ever-popular halfway mark. Although, this time around, I don't know how coveted it is because these are all, remember, disadvantages to being a collector. And one of the biggest ones, it used to mean special, now it just means frustrating, is exclusives. Yeah, especially of mainline, in our case, as Transformers collectors, of mainline characters. It's one thing to do exclusives that have limited runs and limited prints and offered in limited locations and in limited quantities when it's something that's niche. When it's something that, you know what, maybe it won't appeal to everyone, and it is deemed to be something special and unique. However, when you take something, and again, this is probably more specific to toy collectors, although I suppose it could be for like book collectors and stuff. If you take something that's a group or supposed to have a common theme and you offer 2 or 3 of that group or that theme, say at regular retail, regular mainline, and then you make the last part an exclusive, all that does is frustrate people. It makes it limited and makes it hard to get. For example, for Transformers collectors, the cone heads from the Earthrise line. A lot of people said, hey, I got Thrust, but I didn't manage to get the 2-pack with Ramjet and Dirge. Or I actually managed to get the 2-pack of Ramjet and Dirge and never got Thrust. Or I missed out on all 3 because Thrust was a exclusive to Target or Toys R Us in Canada, as where the 2-pack was an Amazon exclusive. Now it seems like they're starting to reissue them. We recently had Legacy Dirge, and some people have gotten that, and the first thing they say is, man, I sure hope they do Ramjet and Thrust. By the way, I've heard that Ramjet is in the pipe at some point. I have not heard anything about a Thrust in the pipe at some point. Pardon me. But I do believe that all of them deserve it. If you're collecting a series of books and they all have the same cover, and you need that last one to have the same cover and you just can't find it because it went to a particular bookstore, that's only going to frustrate fans and be a bigger challenge again. Yes, exclusives takes the number 5 slot. Number 4 is that it's never ending. Does a collection ever stop? Do you actually have some sort of an exit strategy? Do you start limiting what it is that you're getting? Do you get to a point where you're like, I can't get it all, I don't want it all? Or are you somebody who is so deeply entrenched in collecting that you're still to a point where, you know what, I always want more, I always want something better? Or perhaps you're always seeking that definitive version of a particular item or a particular character. You know, we've had an awful lot of Optimus Primes, and there's people out there that just collect that character. Great. But there's people that'll say, I want that best one, that definitive one. If you're a G1 fan, for example, a lot of people would say, the Earthrise pretty much does it. But then other people complain and say, no, no, no. I mean, the biceps, they're not red. The trailer was too small. It didn't come with roller. This, that, and the other thing. I think that sometimes you can customize this stuff, but should you really have to? And then you have different versions that'll come out first with certain imperfections, we'll say to them, that only lead you to getting the version you want later. For example, we had the Earthrise cliff jumper, but then later on we got the buzzworthy Bumblebee cliff jumper that was just a little more G1 accurate. Or we had the Studio Series Ironhide, who was missing his yellow stripe. Well, we got the yellow stripe later on in a buzzworthy 2-pack, but now the windshield was cracked up. I'm willing to bet that there's people out there that rather than hodgepodge pieces together would say, I'll wait until we get one like the buzzworthy with a nice clean windshield chest, and that will be my best Ironhide. And there's arguments for waiting for that stuff too, but maybe you should just put out the thing the fans want first and foremost. Anyway, even if you have something you say, man, I don't see them ever doing this particular character any better, there's always something new. And you'll have to be the one to decide if you want to upgrade or not. Case in point, Ultra Magnus. I am happy with my upgraded Combiner Wars, and some other people are happy with their Siege or their Earthrise. But then you have other people who will say the Studio Series 86 is definitive, and it makes the other ones obsolete. Why did I ever get the other ones? Why did I spend the money on them? Now I need to try and sell them off. Yes, never ending and always something new takes the number 4 slot. Now we're into the top 3, and at number 3 we have prices. Yeah, the costs have gone up to such a wild degree for collectors that for a lot of people they've been priced out, and the overall community is somewhat shrinking, at least for Transformers. I can't speak for other collectors. I've talked about prices often, and some people said, hey, it happened because of inflation, it happened because of, you know, the global crisis. But the price hikes, at least in Canada and outside of the US and some European countries, I think Australia, started in 2018, 2019, before there was ever a global catastrophe. And they've continued ever since, with a focus being on investor profits. I think that they've reached a point where these things now are not worth the value proposition being made, even within the US. Case in point, if you don't believe me, look at everything that's gone to secondary discount retailers like your Ollie's, like your Ross's in the US, and things are being sold on a deep, deep discount. That means that at primary retailers like Walmart and Target and whatnot, those products didn't sell at MSRP. So now they're trickling down because you gotta try and recant some losses somehow. I can guarantee you those secondary retailers, they're still making a profit, even selling it as cheap as what they are. Otherwise, why would the secondary retailers even bother to buy it? With that, and in conjunction with that, you have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? When is the value proposition something that you can't get behind anymore? And that's going to be different for everybody and probably different country to country. Some people will just blindly accept it and they'll say, everything is so much better. Is it though? Have you done the math? And some people will simply say, I find this one a bit disconcerting, and a few voters said this. The prices are crazy, but I don't care. Well, if you don't care, then what sort of message is that sending to the company, and what sort of an effect is that having on the broader collector community? If you also don't believe that, you know, prices are not being supported by the average consumer, we'll say, look no further than the recent bundle listings that went up on Walmart, where you're going to basically, heading into the holiday season of 2023, be able to get 2-for-1 pricing on Legacy and Studio Series releases over the last year or two. To me, that says something, because the CEO of Walmart came out and said, hey, we have warehouses full of product from the last 2 or 3 years. Why do you have warehouses full of it? What does that say about the MSRP and that value proposition? Yeah, the price is a huge disadvantage to collectors, and it takes the number 3 slot. Number 2 biggest challenge for collectors is money. Whether it's you don't have enough to get all the things you want, especially nowadays, or whether it's because you don't have enough to save for anything. You don't save for a house, you don't save for a car because you put everything towards your collection, or whether it's just that you have reached a point where you're like, hey, I've kind of accumulated too much debt, I need to kind of deal with that, right? So like there's a lot of different votes that went into money. It's either not having enough or not necessarily handling it properly, or some people said money, and people complaining that you should spend it on better things or different things. It is a touchy subject for sure, and you know what? Everybody's situation is going to be different based on their job, based on their income, based on their expenses, and their living circumstances, right? It is what it is, and something that always needs to be juggled. Money, for right or for wrong, took the number 2 slot. And now we've gone through them all, and I'm sure that by now an awful lot of people collecting an awful lot of things have heard all of these disadvantages and challenges to being a collector and probably been nodding saying, yep, that's right. A couple might have shook your head and said, no, that one doesn't apply to me. I get it. But I think number 1, which by far won, no doubt about it, I think every collector of anything can relate to this. Number 1 disadvantage to being a collector is trying to find enough space. Yes, the display, the space that things take up, and depending on what you're collecting, it might take up a little bit of space or it might take up a lot of space, right? Even for me, like, I have a mainline collection and it's fairly clean, but it does take up a lot of shelf space, no doubt about it. There are people out there that have whole rooms dedicated to their collection, that have their entire home dedicated to it. I've seen people that have a display that they change out because the space is limited, but then they'll say, I also have 5 like plastic containers full of things that is in the basement or in the shed because I don't have space for it all. Even if you collect hockey cards, eventually your binder is full and you either need to add sheets or you might need another binder. If you collect comic books, you probably have one of those long boxes, or 2 or 3 or 10. They all take up space. Your treasures take up space, and you know what? They're important to you, and that's probably justification enough to allot that space for it. But sometimes you got to know when to kind of say, hey, this is what I got to work with, and that's all I have to work with, and adjust yourself accordingly. The challenge of space and how and where to display everything absolutely takes the number 1 slot. We have gone from 10 down to 1 once again, and other things that had votes. Shipping can be a challenge for sure. Clutter, especially if you're somebody who keeps boxes, and don't keep your items in the boxes. Let's see. What else did we have votes for? Time between wave releases. Either not enough or far too much, and then you get 5 or 6 waves on top of one another, and all of that expense coming at you at once. The idea of I'll get it later, and then you can't get it later and you never find it again. Because maybe you didn't want it at the time, maybe you were on the fence, maybe you didn't have the money, I don't know. Yellowing, if you're a Transformers collector, you know all about that. Pets and the damage that they can cause. Luckily, my cat Mo never caused any damage, and Tessa hasn't touched a thing. What else do we have? The stares that you get. Reselling can be a disadvantage and a challenge because the thing you're trying to resell, guess what? 100 other people are probably trying to resell as well. What else do we have here? Having to keep track of releases and when they're coming. That can get very daunting. Wondering if an item that's in your collection will become valuable. Or not. Completionism. Having to get it all. That also kind of feeds, some people said, into like OCD tendencies, where if you start something, you gotta get the whole thing of it because it is what it is. A lot of people have pointed to Studio Series and where all of those are numbered, and how it's nothing more irritating than when a number is missed. A lot of G.I. Joe collectors, especially classified, have said the same sort of thing. Lack of happiness. You collect, but you don't know why anymore because the joy is gone. Only do it as long as you love it. That and more. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know if your favorites made the list, if your challenges made the list, if your disadvantages made the list or not. I appreciate you coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. Please hit the subscribe button, stick around and have some fun with us here on the channel. And don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single day, you do make a difference in the world, and I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres or the old-fashioned way right here inside the videos.